That day, if our positions were switched, would our fates be different? Would I have your life and you mine?
Yes. And no. Kinda. Let's talk about that. When Dante and Vergil were children, their family home was invaded by demons on Mundus's command. Their mother, Eva, died in the attack, and the two brothers were left to grow up mentally scarred and without family. This traumatic event is considered to be the point when the brothers began to take different paths in life. The experiences they have afterward, in response to this trauma, would come to shape their opposing beliefs. Dante, embracing his humanity, and Vergil, embracing his demonic heritage. All of it can be traced back to this incident. Therefore, what would happen if their positions were swapped? In this hypothetical reality, Vergil would be the one who is saved by his mother Eva, while Dante is left to fend for himself. If this were to happen, how similar or different would Vergil be to canonical Dante, and vice versa? We're going to use all of the official Devil May Cry information available to us, personality psychology, and some genetic research to give the most realistic answer to this question with this video. And if you end up enjoying this video, then you are contractually obligated to subscribe and click the bell icon for future videos. When answering this question, what we need to talk about is the personality of these characters. Their personality will interact with their new emotional trauma to inform their decisions. Therefore, we should first think about the degree to which their personality would change or remain the same. When I first started thinking about answering this question, what immediately came to mind is the whole nature versus nurture debate. For anyone who is not aware, nature versus nurture is a debate within the field of psychology over how aspects of personality and behavior are either influenced more by genetics or by the environment. Nature refers to our genetics. In other words, we inherit these aspects of ourselves from our parents. Nurture refers to the environment. Our personalities and behaviors are shaped by the people around us and the life experiences we have as we grow older. This debate is incredibly relevant to our question of the day because Vergil and Dante have incredibly different personalities that guide their actions. If these personalities were inherited, then changing their positions wouldn't change their basic tendencies as people. So, hypothetical Dante would still be very similar to canonical Dante because his personality comes down to his genetics, something that isn't changing at all within our scenario. However, the dichotomy between canonical Vergil and Dante gives a lot of emphasis on nurture, because the story suggests that these brothers are different due to their respective life experiences. If we follow this same line of thinking, then we would actually expect the hypothetical brothers to be different from their canonical versions, because their environment is changing. Then the question becomes, how much would they change? And would these versions be similar to their canonical brother? After all, they would share the same experience. Hypothetical Dante would experience the same thing as canonical Vergil. If we are emphasizing nurture's influence, then hypothetical Dante should turn out to be similar to canonical Vergil. Can you see how this debate relates? So if this is already a heavily researched topic in psychology, then what does psychology say is the correct answer? Is it nature or is it nurture? Or within the context of this video, would Vergil and Dante's personalities and behaviors remain the same, despite the swap, or would they change? The answer is both. The term nurtured nature refers to the fact that our genetics work together with our environment to shape our personalities and behaviors. Everyone is born with a genetic code they inherited from their parents. I'm referring to DNA, the hereditary material that acts as a genetic blueprint for your body to shape and maintain itself, thus instructing your body to produce all of your physical and neurological characteristics. Psychology research has determined that our genetics heavily influences our personality. We end up sharing the personality traits of our parents even if we are raised apart from them. This is backed by numerous adoption studies that revealed adopted children have personality traits that are more like those of their biological parents, whom they've never met, than the adoptive parents that raised them. There's also temperament, the early signs of a child's personality that can be spotted as early as the first few weeks of life, and are considered to be innate for this very reason. In other words, due to genetics. Explaining temperament in and of itself is a large discussion for another time, but the point is, there is evidence for our personality traits to be influenced by our genetics. However, this doesn't mean we are destined to share the same exact personality of our parents. This is where the environment comes in. We essentially inherit the potential to develop certain personality traits, but the environment gives us opportunities to practice some traits more than others. So if we take anyone and change their positions from birth, they may still demonstrate the characteristics of their parents, but they may also express traits unique from them because the different environment allowed those traits to be nurtured. The environment is also what determines our values and beliefs in life because those characteristics are tied to our life experiences. This is how our personalities can be similar, but have characteristics that are unique from those of our parents. If this is how psychology research has come to understand genetic expression during human development, then that must mean Dante and Vergil would retain their personality, but their different experience of the trauma and the life events that follow would give opportunities for new characteristics to develop. Their canonical personalities would change how they'd respond to their new traumatic experience. In other words, Dante and Vergil would respond differently if their positions were swapped during the incident because of their unique personalities. On the other hand, I believe their values would definitely swap because that is something that was innately connected to their trauma. So if we're swapping the trauma, then I'd say it is safe to assume we'd swap the values gained from said trauma as well. So Vergil would value his humanity, thanks to Eva's sacrifice to protect him, while Dante would value his demonic heritage because it was the only thing that let him survive while he was left alone. However, the events that follow the incident would give new opportunities, which weren't present in the canonical story, for Vergil and Dante to further develop their personalities and other defining characteristics, thus creating a unique life for both of these characters to explore. In this hypothetical reality, Vergil and Dante would be similar in personality to their canonical versions despite the swap, but their values would definitely change. Yet, this does not mean that they would live out the same life as their canonical brother, because there is a different personality guiding the actions they'd take, which would lead to very noteworthy differences. We now have an answer that lets us speculate the specific details of what their lives would be like. Right? Well, not exactly. There is something about Vergil and Dante that we absolutely have to consider before we can be 100% sure that this is the answer. It's something that makes this question much more unique and difficult to answer. We have to take into consideration that Vergil and Dante are identical twins. The story of Devil May Cry seems to heavily imply that they are identical twins. I say imply because I could not find an official source that directly states they are identical twins, but what I could find implies it. We know they are twins because this has been directly stated in universe. In the manga Devil May Cry Code 1, Dante, the character White Rabbit refers to Dante and Vergil as two people who were supposed to be one. The same face, the same powers, Sparta's power evenly divided into two. This is probably the closest to a direct statement that I'm going to get. After all, identical twins come from the same fertilized egg that split into two people who were supposed to be one. There's also supplementary evidence such as their character models being identical in Devil May Cry 3, and Enzo mistaking Vergil for Dante in the same manga I mentioned earlier. I understand they don't look identical in Devil May Cry 5, but even that can be explained. Identical twins start off very similar, but can develop noticeable differences due to various reasons during their development. Diet, exercise, illnesses, injuries, hell, even how close or far they were from the placenta during fetal development can all lead to their appearances deviating as they age. So it makes sense that they were incredibly identical during late adolescence, but have noticeable differences by their 40s. Now, why does this even matter? Well, earlier I said that our genetics and our environment work together to determine our personality and behaviors, right? This is why we cannot definitively say that anyone would end up having the same exact life as someone else if we swap their environments. The environment may remain the same, but they would have a different genetic potential for developing personality traits. You're putting a completely unique code into this environment. However, identical twins are unique in that they are genetically the same. A fertilized egg contains the genetic material of what will eventually grow to become a fully developed baby. There is a chance for this fertilized egg to divide and form two eggs with the same genetic material, thus creating identical twins. So the fact that Dante and Vergil are identical twins presents a new possibility for us to consider. Dante and Vergil essentially inherited the same genetic code. Thus, they have inherited the same potential for developing their personality traits. This detail calls into question everything we've been discussing, because if they have the same genetic material, then swapping their positions during the incident wouldn't change anything. In terms of genetics, putting Dante in Vergil's environment is like swapping Vergil with Vergil. It's the same genetic potential going through the same environmental influence. So if the nature and the nurture remain the same, then wouldn't they actually experience the same life as their canonical brother? Therefore, are we wrong to assume there would be differences? Are we wrong to assume that Dante wouldn't have Vergil's exact same life and Vergil his? Let's find out. This perspective essentially assumes that Dante and Vergil are similar in personality as children up until the moment of their trauma. Therefore, swapping their positions would lead to a total role reversal, where Vergil grows up to become the laid-back, pizza-loving, wacky woohoo, half-man, half-demon, demon hunter for hire. And Dante would become the overly motivated, half-poet, half-demon swordsman. That's the logic here. Proving that this is a realistic outcome is complicated because psychological studies involving identical twins have incredible but conflicting evidence. There are the famous separated twin studies that, just like the adoption studies, are cited as evidence for our personalities being inherited. Psychology researchers have studied identical twins that just so happened to be separated at birth, and found that they still had very similar personalities as fully grown adults, despite being raised in completely different environments. There are numerous studies that have replicated the same results by observing a lot of twins. One study alone in Minnesota had 137 pairs of twins, with 81 of them being identical, and observed their development for 20 years. You know what this means? There are a lot more twins being put up for adoption across the world than I originally thought there were. But for the sake of our question, it also means that it's highly likely that Dante and Vergil were similar enough as children up until the incident that would influence the differences between them. The question we're trying to answer is similar to a separated twin study. We're changing the circumstances in which Dante and Vergil were separated, and we're going to see how similar or different they are from each other as they grow older in separate environments. So that's why I thought separated twin studies were worth checking out to really make sure if our answer to this question is realistic. However, identical twins with different personalities also exist, even those who weren't separated at birth. If you take anything from this video, I hope it's that us humans are incredibly, and at times, frustratingly complex creatures to explain. Our current understanding as to why this happens is pretty much nurtured nature. The differences lie in the non-shared environments that identical twins experience. A non-shared environment refers to the environmental influences that contribute to differences between family members. So even though identical twins have the same genetic potential to develop personality traits, the environmental experiences they have separate from their twin contributes to different traits being more or less expressed with them. So identical twins can be very similar as children, but the different experiences they have separate from each other can influence them to develop different personalities as adults. Which completely contradicts the evidence from the separated twin studies. So what does this information mean for us? Although it is possible for Dante and Vergil to be similar enough in personality as children, it is equally possible for them to have developed noteworthy differences by then. And although we don't have much information about their childhood, the Visions of V manga has revealed that there are some noticeable personality traits, characteristics, and even implied parental experiences that were unique to Dante and Vergil. Then what is the definitive answer to our question? The fact of the matter is that there simply isn't one. Psychology is a constantly evolving field of study. Despite all the knowledge we have acquired, we still don't have the answers to everything. So the best compromise we can make as those who study and incorporate psychology within their work is to not neglect either side of the nature and nurture debate. Instead, we use the information gathered from both sides to the best of our ability. If we can't find the answer to something by looking at the environment, then we can try looking at genetics, and vice versa. Just because we call it a debate doesn't mean we have to sell our soul to using evidence from only one side. So we're going to compromise. We're going to stick with our original answer, but with some slight modifications to take into account the separated twins research. There will be a lot of similarities in terms of the major life events we've seen in Devil May Cry. So Vergil will experience the same things Dante has, and vice versa. The differences will be in how they respond to each experience. Their responses will be due to their unique personality. We will determine which personality traits remain the same by observing the unique traits they had as children before the incident. Now that we have a good, solid foundation for understanding what these characters are going to be like, we can start to speculate about the specific lore differences in part 2 of this video. I know, we just got to the fun part, but this video is way too long as it is. I want to give this section of the analysis the proper time and attention it deserves. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things, like how different Devil May Cry as a business would be if it was run by Vergil, or why Dante would be the one motivated to summon the Demon Tower, the type of relationship Vergil would have with Lady and Trish, and why Dante would come close to killing Trish in Devil May Cry 5. So rest assured, we will have a lot of fun talking about this stuff in part 2. It's not going to be like Big Boss Part 2, where I literally took months to complete. By the time you see this, I will already started working on part 2, to get it out as soon as I can. If you enjoyed this video, then the contract is complete, and you're obligated to hit subscribe and click on the bell to be notified for when part 2 comes out. And as always, my people, thank you for watching. See you in part 2.